All right, excellent. Good evening. It is Monday, June 27th, 2022. This is the Guilford, Connecticut Board of Education. Tonight is our monthly workshop meeting. And tonight we have the great pleasure of receiving for possible action the appointment of a principal to Calvin Lee Elementary School and the appointment of a principal to Adams Middle School. I am going to turn it over to Dr. Freeman, who can give us a brief update on the process, and then we can start to get to know the candidates.
Thank you, Dr. Valstraci. Yeah, so I'm happy to talk about the process for both of these searches, which I'll talk about collectively combined, and then it will be a great privilege to introduce both of these candidates to you this evening. The board is aware, the community is aware that we received 2 principal resignations this year. We know that Mrs. Kenesha Slowly from Leet Elementary School let us know that she would be moving on to pursue another opportunity in another school district. And the board knows that Mr. Michael Regan retired this year and will be moving on into retirement. We posted for both of those positions. We advertised nationally for both of those positions. And I was very pleased with the response that we received. We received 40 applicants for the Leet position. We received 37 applicants for the Adams position. We had many highly qualified candidates for the position. We had candidates who were currently sitting in central office administrative positions who were interested in the principalships that we had here in Guilford. We had many talented and qualified principals from around the state and in fact around the country who applied for these positions. We received applications from Florida to California for this position, and we flew candidates in to sit for interviews for this as part of this search. Mr. Bowden and I did the first screen of those candidates. Of the combined 77 applications, Mr. Bowden and I met approximately 40 of the candidates for Zoom meetings, what we refer to as snapshot meetings. This is an opportunity we consider an extension of the paper screen. From those 40 screening interviews, we brought 11 total candidates forward to 2 separate committees. There was a committee that was set up for the Leet search and a committee that was set up for the Adams search. Those committees included central office administration, building level administration, parents connected to the schools, a board member sat on each of those search committees, teachers from each of the buildings sat on each of those interview committees, and specifically for the Adams committee, we had 2 students who sat on the committee and were part of those interviews as well. In that setting, the candidates came in, 5 in one case, 6 in the other, and spent approximately an hour with the committee answering a broad range of questions. In each case, the slate was whittled down to 2 or 3 candidates who then came forward to what we identify as a performance-based interview. At the performance interview, Dr. Crystal joined me, Jason Scanziano, the Director of Special Services, joined us. Again, there was a teacher from each of the respective buildings who joined us. In these cases, they were both instructional coaches, and another building-based administrator joined. So in the case of the Adams search, we had the Baldwin principal participate in one of the interviews, and then we had Julie Chaff, the high school principal, participate in the second interview. While the performance-based interviews were taking place, we were conducting reference checking on the candidates who had made it to that level. And in the case of our candidate at Leets, the timing allowed us to include a site visit to Mr. Seal's school, and I was able to spend time at recess and in the halls with Mr. Seal in his school. We did not have the opportunity to do that in the Adams case due to timing. It was a fast process. We truncated the process. We wanted very much to have our candidates identified early in the summer so that they will have the opportunity to be able to participate fully in planning over the summer, and particularly in the administrative retreat that will happen for us in early August. It was an aggressive schedule. We met the schedule. In no way did we compromise quality on the search, and I'm incredibly happy with the 2 candidates that we do have to bring forward to you this evening. Happy to answer any questions if there's any further questions on the process and how we brought these 2 candidates forward tonight.
Any questions? I was not part of the committee, either committee this time, but having participated in it, it's a great process and particularly thorough. I must say, and it's a pleasure to be able to be part of it. All right, no questions from us, I guess.
No, just to share that we have some newer members on the board, but that there is always, on these hiring committees, a Board of Ed member is always a participant. So on the earlier side, so that's always helpful.
Yes, and we very much appreciated you being part of the
Yeah.
LEAP interview, and Mr. Delaventura was part of the Adams interview.
Excellent.
I guess I will then invite Mike Seal to
Absolutely.
join us at the table.
Please come join us.
And
Welcome.
I'll start by saying again, it is absolutely my pleasure to bring Mike Seal before the board tonight and to ask for you to please approve him as the next principal at Wheat Elementary School. You have Mike's resume and some of his credentials in front of you.
Right.
I'll simply say two things. One is that there are some districts in the state that Guilford has worked closely with and partnered with over time. Mansfield happens to be one of those districts. For the last year, both Mansfield and Guilford have been participating in a network improvement community of 5 districts that were invited from across the state to work on instructional strategies for moving, at the time, what we thought would be for moving out of the pandemic. And it turned out to be for continuing to do quality instruction while continuing to wrestle with and move through this pandemic. I think incredibly highly of the work that gets done in Mansfield, and Mike has been no small part of that work over the last several years. He is an incredibly experienced principal. He has a depth of experience that he brought to Mansfield and shaped the work at Mansfield. Superintendent Kelly Lyman has credited Mike in no small part with the work that has been done and the work that has moved that district forward. We are incredibly fortunate to have Mike, and I think that part of the reason we have Mike is that he got to know us as we were getting to know him in Mansfield. He's already met most of the leadership team through part of that network opportunity that we've had. And I had a wonderful site visit. Both committees who screened these applicants are happy and confident moving Mike forward. We're lucky to have him, and I am really, really proud to be presenting him as the candidate to you this evening.
Terrific. I know, so welcome.
Thank you.
So wonderful to have you. I know, Moira, do you want to say a few words now? It
Sure,
really
yeah.
helps us as colleagues to hear from the Board of Ed member who is on the committee.
You know, it was a really thorough process. And one thing that, you know, I personally came away with is just, you know, you're inheriting a school that is looking for a very gentle leader, you know, somebody who's going to not come in and want to just usurp things and change, but you had a really calm and easy mannerism that I picked up on right away. And I also really, obviously you're hugely qualified and so impressed with your credentials, and I could read through all of them here. But what I found most impressive about you was your humility, and that although you could read so many amazing accomplishments throughout your career here, the honesty you shared with us, you know, you were very honest in your cover letter saying, you know, I've been offered to join a more administrative role in my district and to be more in a leadership role. And you were very emphatic that you indeed really want to stay in a principal role, and that's something that isn't just a present desire for you, that is something that you really see for yourself. So I'd love for you to talk about that a little bit and share with the rest of board members.
Thank you. It's very flattering to an introduction by superintendent in your words. Thanks so much. Yeah, I felt really lucky to be here, to be the superintendent mentioned all the candidates. And when I saw this job opening, that was like a lightning strike for me, because I knew that I was going to be a good match for the leadership team. You know, I felt like maybe I would be, I wasn't sure, but I had known them. And that's what I'm really looking for. You know, at this point in my career, I want to work in a place that makes sense to me. That's a good match for me philosophically and educationally. I think Guilford is that. I love the fact that you said, you remarked on my humility, this humbling further. Okay, thank you. I was named Director of Teaching and Learning in Mansfield. And I've told this story a couple times now about playing zombie tag one day out at recess. Where now a really good zombie. You gotta just move very, very slowly so kindergartners don't run into each other. But I realized then that, wait a minute, this is probably not a great move for me. You know, even though I love Mansfield, I've learned so much about the colleagues there are tremendous. But they were consolidating 3 elementary schools into 1. So they had to make some decisions about administration. They approved, they named me director of teaching and learning. But then I decided after zombie tag and a few other things, Dairy King, I don't know if you're aware of it, but it's famous now. You know, just being with kids feels like the right thing to do. I feel like I have 15 years of experience being a principal too at the elementary level. And I feel like I'm at the top of my game with that. I think you remarked on my approach to leadership is really about listening and nudging. You know, I think you can't just listen, you gotta do both, right? You want to create a group that works well together with kids first. So I think I've got those skills, and I think that contributed to me being offered this. So I'm happy to talk further about any questions you have.
Wonderful. I'd just be interested in hearing you talk a little bit about something we've heard from teachers. So we have the wonderful opportunity, the board has a wonderful opportunity every year to conduct a meeting roundtable with some of our staff. So a member of generally each grade, each school, some of our specials, et cetera. And it's a meeting we have without Dr. Freeman in the hopes of perhaps getting some free-flowing conversation. And one of the things we heard at that roundtable, I think we've individually heard at other times, is how particularly difficult the last year has been for teachers, right? So we know surely the pandemic since March 2020 has been challenging, but interested in your thought on how we support our teachers as we go into yet another year so that they can do their best to support our students.
Sure. I do think it begins with listening again. I would like to meet with all the teachers and hope maybe all the faculty and staff too before in the summertime. Do the same reasons you do that, right? To like gather information on like what's really happening here and what is this place like. I think of like how you develop a community. For me, I would like to do the same thing with focus groups with parents as well. Like tell me about Calvin Lee. Tell me about what you want your kids to experience at this elementary school and a host of other questions too. I think you, with the faculty and staff, and when they come back in the fall, professional learning in August, to develop norms together, like call them shared agreements. You know, who we are a school who is something I mentioned in an interview. It's kind of a protocol to talk to really think through based on the Guilford mission and vision and their core beliefs. How do we fit in as an elementary school? Who are we? And naming those things explicitly is really important in my mind. And then I think it's relational, very much so. Like I'm establishing a relationship with, you know, the 40 people who live and breathe at Calvin Lee every single day. And, you know, that building on that trust, developing that trust is really important. I think the best cultures, school cultures, do events like wellness events with teachers. In the last few years, this has been really important, but it's not as powerful as doing the work together. So I think the context of building a safe place for people is the relationships with the principal, the norms we develop together, in doing the work together in a safe way. So I will message very early on that I appreciate people taking risks, people innovating. I'll create space for teams to develop, first grade team, kindergarten team, second grade team, develop over time. And I'll message to them all that, hey, this is our mission and vision. And I really appreciate it. If you innovate, take some risks, I'll have you back. So through that work, I think you generate a lot of trust.
Mhm.
You develop strong relationships, and it really leads to strong learner outcomes too.
Thank you.
Sure.
Others have questions?
I just wanted to touch upon one thing that jumped right out in your letter was just your love of a small school setting and your hope to really know each child and family well. And I just, for you, you're going to be starting from fresh, but I guess I think of the mindset of the pandemic of the last 2 years. So in a lot of ways, a lot of people are kind of starting on the same page. How do you envision building that? I heard you touch upon focus groups with parents. Just what is your vision of building and growing that role in that relationship?
With parents, with
Yeah, and
families.
children.
Yeah, I think that it's the day, it's zombie tech, it's Dairy King, it's being with kids. And they quickly learn that, I'm on their side, and they can trust me. When they see me helping them solve problems, interacting in learning, activities and classes. And I think with families, it's the same thing. It's like I was reading The Listening Leader today, one of my favorite books. And there was some really great suggestions on focus group. How do you do what you just asked? I think it's one, I would love to meet with a parent-teacher organization and let's start that, like, how does parent-teacher organization work here? What are the events and traditions that are important, like Calvin Lee, and how can we feel those? But I do think it's one-on-one. Your trust is really the sum of every single interaction you have with the person on the site. So each one has to be really important to build on that. I do think that simple events like ice cream social, or there's a host of them. Those are really important kind of touch points for kids and families. But when I saw that there were around 250 kids at Calvin Lee, it really was. As soon as I saw the posting, I was like, how many kids are at Calvin Lee? This is like, because it really makes a difference when you can, if a size of the tribe, so to speak, is less than 300 kids or so, you can really get to know kids in deep, deep ways. And I love that where I am now and look forward to it.
That's great. My company's having an ice cream social this week.
It works for adults too.
Yeah.
I think that was an invitation.
Other questions?
Sure. Mike, I'd love to hear what drew you to Guilford and what drew you to Calvin Lee, other than the size of the community, but are there other things about Guilford that you are interested in?
I don't know the area that well. I grew up on near Narragansett Bay in Rhode Island and love this whole stretch of the Sound. So geographically, I dream of coming to this area. Would be wonderful. I don't know if they'll be able to swing that in the near future because the mortgage rates just went up like.
Yes.
He's already contract negotiating.
My realtor keeps actually already texted me in Guilford. But it was really Superintendent Freeman, the leadership team. This is a really good match, and that's a huge thing for me. So you can see on my resume, I've been at some places that I would characterize as really innovative, and I don't want to go backwards on that. I really want to work in a place that is focused on deeper learning. It's focused on engaging kids in real world work. Their effort creates ability kind of theme is really important to me too. And they work with Laura the work of Laura Resnick at the University of Pittsburgh is a really solid match for me. Definitely the size is huge, but that's a lot right there. Right? You got and quite frankly, the more I read about Guilford, the board is also a powerful reason to come to Guilford. Support from the superintendent. You've got the best superintendent in my mind. Now that Kelly Wyman on the one under is my superintendent is retiring at the end of the week. But there is no better superintendent in my mind than Superintendent Freeman. And all the work at the NIC, I don't even know what it stood for, but
It's a network improvement
thank
community.
you.
Community.
And meeting, a bunch of folks from there and seeing them in action. Checked a lot of boxes for me. It's real. I feel really fortunate to be sitting at this end of this table right now.
Great. Do you have any questions for us? I know, I mean, I got to meet you, but no. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think I will be in listening mode for a while here. I'm already trying to set up appointments. The tech guy has already helped me out. And the assistant superintendent's offered to meet me quickly to answer some questions. So I'll be learning about Guilford in the next month and be prepared for the retreat in early August.
I don't want to cut anyone. Is anyone else?
I guess less a question, more a comment. I appreciated how you said you were going to make space for teachers to innovate and allow them to take the risk and that you would have their back. And I think you saying that made me think if you're going to have their back, we're going to have your back, just like we have Dr. Freeman's back. So.
And teachers weirdly don't believe you. I have to say it over and over and over and over and over again. No, I really mean it. And it'll take a year for them to really understand that I meant it back in September. Thank you for your comment.
But that's a really good point, Arnold, because I think they've needed to hear that from all angles this past few years. And like he mentioned, they'll need to keep knowing that the support's there for them to do their job. They're the professionals and you said to take risks. So it's great.
Wonderful. We really look, it was wonderful to have this opportunity. It's wonderful all the time to have this opportunity because as I was just about to say, we look forward to this. We each of us get opportunities to be on the interview committee, but as a group, this is our first chance. We've heard good things, but our first chance to get a chance to ask some questions. So thank you so much. Wonderful.
I'll see you at the ice cream social.
All right.
That's right. I guess. Wonderful. All right. And we have then, do I want to make them,
It's up to you. It's
Yeah.
up to the board.
Yeah,
You could
let's do
choose to
that.
make. a
why don't we do
motion.
that? Okay.
Yeah.
So we have had an opportunity to get to talk to Mike Seal, who is the candidate who's been brought forward as for the principalship of Calvin Lee Elementary School. We've heard from our colleague Moira Rader, who has been on the interview committee, and heard from Dr. Freeman. I'm going to ask for a motion to accept the appointment of Mr. Seal to be principal of Calvin Lee Elementary School.
So moved.
A second?
Second.
Second. Any other conversation, questions? No? All right, all in favor?
Hi.
Aye. Wonderful. Welcome to
Congratulations.
Guilford. Absolutely. We're thrilled to have you. Welcome to Guilford, and we look forward to getting to know you. All right. Second, or next item on the agenda is to receive for possible action the appointment of Adams Middle School principal. So I will turn again to Dr. Freeman.
Thank you very much, Dr. Tracy. I'm happy to do this again. So it is absolutely my pleasure to present to you tonight, Dr. Garen Mullen. Just as Mansfield is one of the districts in this state that we look to or against which we benchmark ourselves, there are some other districts as well. And Darien is one of the districts that everybody recognizes as one of the highest performing districts in the state. Darien tends to be a little more well-resourced than Guilford Public Schools. The per student expenditure is a little higher than ours, but we don't mind looking and seeing what we can take from school districts like Darien. Dr. Mullen has been an assistant principal at the middle school level and most recently a principal at the, assistant principal at the middle level and most recently a principal at the elementary level in Darien Public Schools. When I spoke to Dr. Alan Adley, the superintendent in Darien, he made it clear to me that he looks to Dr. Mullen as one of his go-to administrators. She was elevated from the position of assistant principal to principal in a pandemic at a time where school needed somebody to come in to be a steady hand to help that school move through the pandemic and what that school was experiencing. And he leaned on Dr. Mullen to do that. Prior to her time in Darien, she was a special education coordinator in Fairfield Public Schools. I need to say that I think one of my favorite answers in our conversations is when I asked Dr. Mullen to talk about her time at the middle school. Her dissertation happens to be on middle level learning as well. She very much presented herself and positioned herself as a middle school person and saw Adams as an opportunity to return to the middle school. But when I specifically asked her about the time that she had most recently spent at the elementary level and what impact that would have on her effectiveness as a middle school principal, without hesitation, and in fact, there was a bit of a guttural noise in the answer, but she made it really clear that she is going to be better at the middle level for the time that she had just spent at the elementary, working with generalist instructors, working with the younger students, taking that time and now bringing that back to the middle school, she sees as adding to her toolkit, deepening her understanding of kids, and helping her to see this opportunity in a different way. It really was just one of my favorite answers. Again, for the second time tonight, it really is a privilege, and I'm very proud to bring this next candidate forward. Dr. Mullen, would you join us up at the board table, please? I'm happy to ask for your approval tonight.
Welcome. Our colleague John Delventura was part of the interview process. Unfortunately, John couldn't be here tonight, but sent an email today asking me to read the following. On Tuesday, June 7th, I had the privilege of spending the day with a group of students, parents, educators, and administration. As a committee, our goal was to interview and evaluate the incredibly talented pool of applicants for the position of principal at E.C. Adams Middle School. I sat on the committee as both a board member and a parent. My two daughters, Grace and Abigail, are rising 7th and 8th graders and will be the first class of students under the leadership of our new principal. Our task was not easy. From 8 a.m. to 4 p.m., we met with distinguished veterans in education from varying backgrounds. At the end of the day, it was clear that my fellow committee members and I agreed that Dr. Garen Mullen shined and would be a welcome addition to the GPS family. Dr. Mullen's extensive education, experience, certifications, and committee work will allow her to make an immediate impact upon her introduction to the E.C. Adams facility and families. I think that meant faculty, sorry, faculty and families. Dr. Mullen is a highly respected administrator, having served as coordinator of middle school special education in Fairfield Public Schools, and most recently as both assistant principal and principal in Darien Public Schools. So that's what our colleague had to say. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Turning over to my colleagues, does anyone want to start with questions? I am ready to start as well. Okay.
Processing, sorry.
Okay, I will give it a start. I think a similar question that I had earlier, as we continue to try to support teachers and students following the last couple of years, what are some of the things that are going to be important to you as you consider this role as a middle school principal in Guilford?
Yeah, absolutely. First, just let me say thank you so much, Dr. Freeman, and to the board for having me here. I'm really excited about this opportunity to join the Adams family and kind of join this tradition of excellence that you have in Guilford. So the past 3 years have been, I think any word we say is an understatement. In the school that I have been in, we were experiencing some real culture and climate issues within the school, a lot of new leadership. And I was brought in to help with that transition and just kind of get the building back to feeling good, back to a steady state, and really do some of that culture and climate work. When the pandemic hit, there was no better time, but also no more difficult time to do that work because people were slowly falling apart. And how do you keep a community together when you're apart from each other? My background is in mental health. I'm a counselor by trade. And so I leaned on those skills to think about what I thought people needed in each of the moments that I was with them. And people needed support, and they needed a listening ear. They needed to vent. And they needed to know that you have their backs, to Mike's point. And building that trust with the staff was what kept us together during the pandemic. You know, teachers, staff members, administrators, all of us are experiencing the extreme levels of burnout. And so when I met with my faculty at the end of this year and I said, that a lot of schools couldn't have done what we did, but we came out of this pandemic better than we started. And that was a testament to the staff, but the work that we did together to support each other. To me, it comes down to not only building trust, but with the school community, with parents, it's about communication. It's about finding avenues to make sure that parents feel as connected to the middle school community that they did at the elementary level. And that's something that I've really learned in this kind of journey that I've taken down to the elementary school. And what I'd like to bring back to the middle school is, and I hadn't seen it before, at the middle school, you know, it's like all of a sudden your kid goes to middle school, you don't even know what the inside of the school looks like anymore. At the elementary school, it's different. You're in the classrooms constantly. There's so many opportunities. You're really a part of that school fabric. And that's what I'd like to cultivate in this new experience at the middle school. That's what's making me really excited to return to middle school. We were talking before the meeting. I love that age group. I just think it's so fun to watch the kids kind of become the first versions of the people that they're going to be. But I think finding that way to kind of bring some of that magic from elementary school up to the secondary level, in particular in these times, will be really powerful in continuing to kind of build a community.
Excellent. Thank you. That's great.
I have a question kind of feeds off what you were saying. You know, I know we heard this from administrators and teachers that, you know, one of the tenets in our districts is social emotional learning, and I see with my own children, the social development, it's almost a real delay in social skills and especially in the middle school, because they're kind of being expected to be a little more gathered, a little more controlled, a little, you know, have all those social dynamic skills with their peers that are really, they're a few years behind. And I'm curious, you know, what are your thoughts about, I mean, have you observed that yourself? Have you strategically thought of ideas that you've seen work? I mean, it's not a magic pill that's going to change it, but you're inheriting kids who are not your, you know, not a typical place developmentally for a lot of reasons because of the pandemic.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, one of the things I've said this year, time and time again, is that I wish last year we had never said the words COVID impact, because I don't think that that's really what it was that first year coming out of school shutdown. This year, we saw some really, I think some really critical things happening with kids. The social experience, I think that you're talking about, are those gaps in social skills. I think they need to be worked on anyway. I don't know that that's purely kind of the essence of the pandemic, but there's a lot more technology. We have to think about social media. We have to think about just the immediate gratification that kids experience and how that then plays into what a conversation looks like in real life, in person. So I think understanding that about middle school kids is helpful. One of the things that I've noticed is that because kids spend time isolated from their peers and online, there are gaps in their social skills and development for some kids. I think some kids had the fallback families of sports teams and outside activities that kind of kept them connected, and some kids didn't have that and are struggling to find their way. One of the things that I always think about with our older kids right now at the school that I'm in, and we'll be really keeping an eye on at the middle school level, is the kids that don't seem to have found their group yet. Those are the kids that I think with COVID impact, we have to attend to even more. One of the things that I always kind of talk about when I think about social and emotional learning, or just working with kids to kind of help them through different situations, is that it's really just about unsolved problems. Kids do well if they can. And so if they aren't doing well, it's because there's something getting in the way. And it's our job to help them, you know, kind of understand what that unsolved problem might be and collaborate with them to solve it. And I think that because I think we all do well if we can. And if we aren't doing well, it's because, you know, we've been maxed out or something's gotten in our way to doing well. I think that's just kind of the human condition. So I think if we think about kids that way, that kids do well if they can, instead of they do well if they want to, or they, you know, any of those things. It softens the edges of what's going on a little bit, and it allows us to connect with kids and really have conversations about what's going on, what their experience is, and how we as educators, as partners with them, can help solve those problems.
Thank you.
I just feel like you just like hit so many nails on so many heads. I want to like hug you right
I
now.
know, right?
I don't. No, yeah, I mean, I'm sure you've heard your predecessor was an incredible person who made immediate impact and connection with so many students. I have no doubt in this brief time of listening to you that you can do a wonderful job. But how do you envision that? How do you, it's a big school, it's not 250 kids, it's the merging of 4 schools. Like, how do you envision connecting with these new students that you're about to meet?
Yeah, it's actually one of the things I'm most excited, I want to say most excited about, but like also, there's all of the other pieces in the mix that are so exciting about this, but I think the connecting with kids piece, that's kind of my jam. That's what I really enjoy doing. And I think it has to do with the middle school version of zombie tag, right? It has to do with getting out there and understanding the feel of the school, the culture, the vibe of the school, what's happening when kids have unstructured time, how are they interacting with each other, and then how can I interface in those settings? So whether it's the lunch block or whether it's, arrival or things like that, that's when you're catching kids and getting to know them and making brief connections that you can carry over either into the classroom when you're, either highlighting some work that they're doing or pulling up a chair right alongside of them and kind of understanding, what point they're at in their own learning. And I think it carries over into their after school activities too, understanding, what sports are going on, what clubs are going on, what that feel of Adams is. Those are my starting points. And I think kids, all kids they want to make us proud. They want to know that they're doing the right thing, that they're making us proud of what they're doing. And I don't know that we always find small moments to highlight that. And that's something that I've worked a lot in my school now on is just finding those small moments to either, shoot a quick email home and just say to, a parent, hey, Mrs. So-and-so, Johnny held the door open for somebody today. This was the moment that it created and this was really special. Or I needed help and, Susie helped me do X, Y, and Z. Noticing kids in those really small moments, giving them that positive reinforcement and then bringing that connection into another interaction with kids makes them understand that it's them that you're thinking about. It's not just the job. It's not just I'm saying hi to kids in the hallway and then we're moving on, you're going to math class and all of that. But it's a little bit more than catching kids doing well. It's catching kids in the moment where they don't always know that somebody's seeing them and making sure that they feel seen.
Anybody else?
We all set? I love her.
You love it.
Well, we were informing her that 3 of us have daughters who will be 8th graders next year. So,
Well, wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank
It's
you.
a great pleasure to meet you. Once again, this gives us an opportunity here. I'm going to ask for a motion to move forward the appointment of Dr. Mullen as the Adams Middle School principal. So second, any further discussion, questions, conversation? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Wonderful.
Congratulations.
Welcome. And welcome to Adams.
Thank you.
And likewise, we really look forward to getting to know you and to supporting you in your work.
Thank you again for all your support. tonight.
Wonderful.
Two
No.
important decisions. Thank you very much. And thank you to the board members who put so much time into the decision-making process, as well as everybody else who served on the various committees in various ways.
Well, and I want to thank Dr. Crystal's here, Dr. Crystal for her role in this, and the teachers and other administrators, the parents, the 2 students on the Adams committee. Really, all these perspectives are so important. Again, I've had the opportunity to do a couple of these searches, including with students as well, all the way up. It is a great process to be a part of. And we're just so excited to have you both with us.
we really are.
Wonderful. Great. This is do you have anything to add
I
before
was
I
just gonna
go
say,
to
you've
my
got
next
one more item.
section?
I was gonna ask if we could maybe take a brief recess. Allow
Absolutely.
people to say thank you and hello and start to say goodbye before you go into your last. item.
Absolutely. So let me just explain, right, that our last item is an executive session. I will we're going to put a pause for a few minutes and allow those interactions to happen. And then I will come back and ask for a motion to go into executive session.
I'm actually gonna get both of our now appointed principals to sign contracts before I allow them to leave.
There we go. All right. So I think probably what we can do for the purpose of the recording, which is going live stream, is to note that we will go into executive session. We will leave executive session. There will be no votes taken after executive session, so we'll adjourn. So I think probably it is fine
To end the broadcast.
to end
for
the
this evening.
broadcasting and thank our community members who joined us tonight via the live stream. Thank you. All right.